There's a modern epidemic killing masculine attraction, and most men don't even know they're infected. Right now, millions of good men are unknowingly sabotaging their own romantic success by following advice that sounds morally right but is psychologically disastrous. If you've ever wondered why being the perfect gentleman leaves you invisible while seemingly careless men get the girl, you're about to uncover the Machiavellian principle that explains everything. But be warned, this truth is so contrary to what we're taught that it might make you uncomfortable. There was a time when men were told that kindness was their greatest virtue, that if they were generous, patient, and endlessly understanding, love would reward them. They believed that the path to a woman's heart was through constant giving time, attention, affection, and approval. But over time, something strange began to happen. The more they gave, the less they were valued. The more they tried to please, the more invisible they became. It's not because kindness is wrong, it's because kindness without power is weakness, and weakness in the eyes of desire is never respected. The nice guy became the modern peasant in the kingdom of romance. Always ready to serve, to apologize, to fix what he didn't break, he traded his masculine edge for approval, and in doing so he lost the very thing that creates attraction, tension. Machiavelli would have called this a fatal misjudgment of human nature, because people, he said, are moved not by morality, but by interest, not by what you give, but by what you represent. The nice man represents safety, but not challenge, predictability, but not passion. And the tragedy is, he believes he's doing everything right. He mistakes comfort for connection, thinking if he's just patient enough, she'll one day realize his worth. But women rarely fall for the man who waits. They fall for the man who leads. There's a Machiavellian truth buried here. When a man abandons his self-interest to please others, he ceases to command respect. In politics, a prince who gives too much is devoured by those who sense his fear. In love, it's the same. The woman, seeing his endless devotion, begins to wonder, if he values me this much, does he value himself at all? The nice guy narrative was built on emotional dependency. It taught men to trade authenticity for acceptance, but acceptance earned through self-betrayal is fragile. It breaks the moment you stop feeding it, and women, whether consciously or not, can sense this imbalance. They can sense when a man is not acting from power, but from need. A Machiavellian man understands this difference. He gives, but not from emptiness. His kindness has boundaries. His affection has weight. Because what he offers is choice, not submission. And that choice, to stay, to give, to care, is what makes his presence valuable. The modern nice guy, however, has forgotten how to say no. He thinks rejection is failure, when in truth, rejection is filtration. Every time a man refuses to tolerate disrespect, he refines his worth. But the nice man fears conflict, and Machiavelli warned of this. The man who avoids conflict to keep peace invites greater ruin. The more he avoids asserting himself, the more invisible he becomes in her eyes. Women don't lose interest because a man is kind. They lose interest because he is predictable. He has no mystery, no polarity, no fire that makes her question where she stands with him. He is all comfort and no challenge, and human desire, male or female, thrives on tension. Without it, the connection dies quietly, like a candle starved of air. The world is now waking up to this imbalance. Men are realizing that playing nice is not a strategy, it's surrender. That love built on approval will always collapse under the weight of unspoken resentment. That respect cannot be negotiated through favors, but earned through presence. And so, the nice guy illusion begins to crumble. Across the world, men are withdrawing their energy, their validation, their willingness to chase. They are starting to act, not react. They are learning that being agreeable is not the same as being admirable. But this shift raises a deeper question. If kindness without strength leads to rejection, what kind of man does a woman truly crave? Desire is not born from comfort, it's born from contrast, from a magnetic tension between admiration and uncertainty, between knowing someone's power and knowing they could walk away at any moment. This is the paradox that most men miss. They think women fall for affection alone, but it's not affection that stirs desire. It's power, the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove, doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply is. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology gave it a name. He wrote that people are drawn to rulers who appear in control. Men whose composure cannot be shaken by emotion, whose value isn't negotiated by others' opinions. Power, in its purest form, is not domination, it's detachment with purpose. A man who governs himself becomes magnetic because he is unpredictable, self-contained, and utterly unbothered by approval. Think about it. When a man is desperate for validation, his energy is chaotic. Every gesture, every compliment, every message comes from fear. Fear of losing, fear of being unseen. But when a man has purpose, his presence feels different. His attention has gravity because it's scarce. His affection means something because it's not easily given. He doesn't chase. He chooses, and that choice gives him quiet authority. In love, as in politics, people respect the one who can withhold, the man who can say no, the one who can smile at beauty but not be enslaved by it. Because restraint, when used wisely, amplifies desire. It creates the impression of depth, that there's something more behind his eyes, something she must earn the right to see. And it's that mystery, that subtle resistance, that awakens her pursuit. Machiavelli would call this the art of governing appearances. For just as a ruler must appear generous yet firm, merciful yet unyielding, so must a man understand balance in attraction. Show too much need, and you lose leverage. Show too much coldness, and you lose connection. The key lies in measured power, to give without surrendering, to care without clinging. A man's energy becomes desirable when it is focused, not fragmented, when he has ambition that extends beyond romance, when his world does not revolve around a single person, but around a vision, a mission, a self-defined purpose. Because women are not drawn to what a man does for them. They're drawn to what a man represents. He represents stability, direction, a sense of certainty that modern life has all but erased. And yet power is easily misunderstood. Many think it's aggression, or control, or manipulation, but real power doesn't require domination. It's the calm confidence of knowing you are complete, that no rejection, no silence, no absence of affection can strip you of your worth. It's a man who could have everything, yet still knows how to walk away. Look around today's world. The men who are desired, respected, followed, they don't chase attention, they draw it. Their energy is sovereign, they move with purpose, not pressure. Their time is valuable, their presence felt. Because when a man carries himself like he belongs to no one, people begin to wonder how to belong to him. This is why so many men who detach from approval suddenly find women noticing them again. It's not the haircut, not the outfit, not the new attitude. It's the energy of command. The quiet assurance that says, I am my own source. That power creates the very tension that fuels attraction. And the more he stands in it, the more magnetic he becomes. But here's the deeper truth. If power creates desire, what happens when a man gives it away too easily? Once upon a time, emotional detachment was seen as coldness, as if a man who refused to react was somehow heartless or numb. But what if detachment isn't about suppressing emotion, but mastering it? What if it's the art of being moved without being ruled? For centuries, philosophers and strategists have known this truth. A man who cannot govern his emotions will be governed by those who can manipulate them. And that, Machiavelli would say, is how empires fall. Not by swords, but by sentiment. Emotional detachment is not indifference. It's clarity. It's the space between stimulus and response where power is born. The modern man has lived too long in reaction, reacting to rejection, reacting to attention, reacting to every emotional fluctuation in the women he desires. He's become like a sailor lost at sea, tossed by every wave of validation. But detachment is the anchor. It's the act of saying, I will feel, but I will not fold. Machiavelli's prudence was his highest form of intelligence. It meant acting from foresight, not feeling. In relationships, this means no longer begging for closure, no longer chasing answers from those who withhold them, no longer drowning in emotions that serve no strategy. Detachment gives a man the calm to observe patterns, to see truth beneath charm, to recognize whether affection is genuine or tactical. A man who is emotionally detached doesn't lose empathy, he gains perspective. When a woman pulls away, he does not crumble. When she tests his patience, he does not retaliate. His strength lies in his silence, in the confidence that he does not need to control the outcome. And paradoxically, it's this restraint that draws people toward him, because nothing is more alluring than composure under pressure. Detachment transforms how a man moves through the world. He no longer measures his worth by reactions. He no longer tries to persuade love to stay. He stops trying to fix, to prove, to plead. Instead, he simply observes. He studies behavior the way Machiavelli studied the court. Every gesture, every silence, every contradiction becomes data, not drama. His emotions are not a battlefield anymore, they're a compass, and something begins to shift inside him. The noise of desperation quiets, his mind clears. He starts to notice the difference between attraction and attachment, between connection and dependency. He realizes that when he was emotionally attached, he wasn't loving, he was clinging. But when he became detached, he began to see love for what it truly is, a choice, not a chain. Society tells men to open up, to feel everything, to be vulnerable at all times. But Machiavelli would warn that vulnerability without discernment is suicide. To reveal everything is to give away leverage. The wise man opens up selectively, when trust is earned, not assumed, because detachment is not isolation, it's filtration. It separates those who value your presence from those who exploit it. Emotional detachment creates a new kind of man. Calm in chaos, passionate yet poised, warm but untouchable. He becomes a paradox, a storm that does not rage, a fire that does not burn out. Women sense it instantly, that grounded, unshakable energy, the kind that doesn't demand attention. It commands it, and in that presence, she feels both safe and challenged. It's the duality of control and surrender that fuels attraction itself. But as men begin to embrace this new renaissance of emotional power, one question still remains. When you master detachment, do you gain control of love, or risk losing it forever? There's a new kind of man emerging in the modern age, not driven by impulse, not enslaved by desire, but guided by calculation and awareness. He is not cold, but he is controlled. He studies emotion the way a strategist studies a battlefield, not to destroy, but to understand. This is the rise of what can only be called strategic masculinity, the kind of masculine intelligence that Machiavelli himself would have admired. Because in a world ruled by reaction, the man who can think before he feels becomes unstoppable. Strategic masculinity is not manipulation, it is mastery. It's the ability to recognize that human relationships, like politics, follow predictable patterns. That attraction, loyalty, even betrayal, all stem from the same roots, power and perception. A Machiavellian man sees this clearly. He knows that those who control perception control outcomes. He understands that being good is not enough. One must be effective, and effectiveness requires more than charm. It requires awareness, timing, and restraint. Think about how most men approach women. They lead with emotion, with flattery, with hope. They reveal their intentions before they understand the terrain. They rush to give without observing what is being received. But the strategic man waits. He studies the dynamic. He asks himself, what does she respond to? What does she test? What does she value? He is not guessing, he is analyzing. His interest is tempered by patience, his desire disciplined by foresight. Machiavelli wrote, "He who builds on the people builds on mud." In modern love, this translates to, "He who builds his identity on validation builds on instability." Strategic masculinity means building on foundation, purpose, independence, and boundaries. These are the pillars that keep a man grounded when emotion tries to sway him. A man who has purpose cannot be easily manipulated, because he is not seeking fulfillment through another. His fulfillment already exists within him. And when a man moves with strategy, something fascinating happens. His energy becomes measured. His speech slows. His actions gain precision. He no longer over-explains, over-apologizes, or over-pursues. Each word he speaks carries intent. Each gesture reveals balance. He does not react to disrespect with anger. He responds with withdrawal, because he knows to remove one's attention is the ultimate display of control. That's not cruelty, that's leadership. Strategic masculinity also means knowing when to yield and when to stand firm. The wise man understands that dominance is not about constant control, it's about the timing of surrender. Machiavelli said that fortune is a woman, and to master her, one must sometimes yield and sometimes resist. Likewise, a man who knows when to show softness and when to assert boundaries becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability keeps desire alive. But what separates the strategic man from the reactive man is foresight. The reactive man is trapped in emotion. The strategic man uses emotion as information. When she withdraws, he does not chase, he observes. When she provokes, he does not explode. He evaluates. When she tests, he doesn't fail. He calculates. And in this calculation, he gains advantage. Not to win against her, but to win mastery over himself. In a time where masculinity is being questioned, the strategic man does not debate his role, he defines it. He doesn't wait for permission to lead. He simply embodies leadership through discipline, self-respect, and silence. He's not loud about his worth. He moves like a man who knows it. And because his behavior reflects certainty, the world begins to respond in kind. Strategic masculinity is not about deception, it's about depth. It's the awareness that kindness without discernment leads to exploitation, and dominance without empathy leads to isolation. It's about balance, the middle ground between the heart and the mind, where emotion is felt but never allowed to rule. The man who lives here becomes magnetic because he represents what's rare, self-mastery. But as men evolve into this new kind of power, measured, intentional, unyielding, the question becomes inevitable. When a man learns to strategize in love, does he become truly free or dangerously untouchable? There is a quiet revolution happening among men, not loud, not violent, but internal. It's not about rebellion against women, it's about rebellion against weakness, against self-betrayal, against the centuries-old conditioning that taught men to beg for love instead of embodying it. This is the Machiavellian awakening. The return of the man who no longer seeks permission to lead, to feel, or to walk away. The man who has remembered that power and virtue are not enemies, but allies. For too long, men have been trained to measure their worth through acceptance, to please, to prove, to provide endlessly, hoping that effort would buy admiration. But Machiavelli understood that human affection is fickle, that loyalty shifts with circumstances, and that those who chase approval often lose both power and peace. He warned that a ruler who depends too much on love becomes the servant of those he rules. And so it is with men in love. When affection becomes your source of strength, the absence of it becomes your collapse. The awakening begins. The moment a man realizes that his emotional survival can no longer depend on someone else's validation, it's the moment he stops asking, "What do they think of me?" and starts asking, "What do I think of myself?" This internal shift is not arrogance, it's reclamation. He stops living as a performer in other people's stories and begins writing his own. His silence becomes his strategy, his restraint becomes his weapon, and his presence becomes his persuasion. The Machiavellian man does not reject love, he refines it. He loves with clarity, not dependency. He gives without losing himself. His kindness now has a backbone, his patience has a limit, and his forgiveness has a filter. Because he understands what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Men must be either caressed or annihilated. You cannot be both endlessly gentle and eternally respected." True balance demands edge, And that edge is what women secretly crave, but few men dare to wield. The awakening is not about cruelty or revenge, it's about awareness. A man who awakens sees manipulation where he once saw romance, he notices emotional tests where he once saw affection. He realizes that in every relationship, power shifts subtly, through silence, through attention, through who cares more, and rather than fear that reality, he learns to navigate it. He becomes emotionally bilingual, fluent in both tenderness and calculation. This kind of man is dangerous in the best way possible, not because he harms, but because he cannot be harmed easily. His worth no longer fluctuates with external approval. If a woman stays, he values her presence. If she leaves, he values his peace. In both outcomes, he remains the same, composed, deliberate, unshaken, and that unshakable energy becomes his magnetism. Because in a world drowning in emotional chaos, composure is charisma. Yet, the Machiavellian awakening goes beyond relationships. It touches every part of a man's existence, his career, his ambitions, his friendships. Everything begins to orbit around one central principle: sovereignty. He no longer reacts to the world, he shapes it. He understands that self-control is the foundation of all power, and power is the foundation of all attraction. He knows that when a man commands himself, he commands the room, and so he walks through life with the quiet confidence of a man who has seen both love and loss, and remains unfazed by either. His eyes carry the wisdom of detachment, his tone carries the weight of certainty. He doesn't need to prove his dominance, it emanates from his calm. Because the truly Machiavellian man doesn't conquer others. He conquers himself first. But this awakening raises the final, most haunting question. When a man becomes so self-contained, so untouchable, so sovereign, does he transcend love altogether, or has he finally learned how to love without losing himself? What we've witnessed isn't the death of kindness, it's the rebirth of strength. The modern man is no longer content to live as a servant of emotion, nor as a prisoner of approval. He's learned what Machiavelli tried to teach the rulers of his time, that mercy without might is meaningless, that goodness without power invites betrayal. The nice guy has finally understood his mistake. He gave everything except what mattered most: respect for himself. He tried to win love by surrendering authority, forgetting that love without respect is an illusion that collapses the moment it's tested. But now, something has shifted. Men are no longer apologizing for their nature. They're studying it, they're refining it, they're reclaiming the part of masculinity that was never meant to be tamed, its strategic mind, its emotional discipline, its quiet command. This awakening isn't about rejecting women, it's about restoring balance. When a man becomes grounded, detached, and sovereign, he doesn't destroy connection. He deepens it, because only a man who owns himself fully can truly give himself without fear. Only a man who can walk away can love without losing his center. The Machiavellian man stands at this crossroads. Heart and mind aligned, love and logic intertwined. He doesn't play nice to be liked. He acts with purpose to be respected. He doesn't seek control over others. He seeks mastery over himself. And in that mastery, he finds freedom. The freedom to lead, to love, to let go. This is not the end of men being kind. It's the end of men being powerless. The age of strategy has begun. The era of the self-possessed man has returned. The question now is, in a world that feeds on weakness, will you have the courage to become ungovernable?